going to be talking to you today about what autism has taught me about video games and vice versa. I'm the author of a book that was released in middle of 2016, a novel called Boy Made of Blocks, which was, it's a story about a father called his 9-year-old autistic son, Sam, and how the two of them form a relationship through playing the video game Minecraft. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this story came about later on, but just for now, the novel, it came out 2016. I'm really glad to say it's sold around 200,000 copies now, and it's been translated into languages, which was a real surprise. And it was also picked for the Richard and Judy book club, which was a particular pleasure because I got to meet Richard and Judy. And they are exactly, in real life, they are exactly like they are on television, which is very pleasing. So I'm the author. But for 25 years, I've also been a video game journalist. I started writing about video games in 1995 for a magazine called Edge, and I worked pretty much ceaselessly on almost every single video game magazine your children can think of. In 2005, I started writing for The Guardian about video games. They were a very forward-thinking newspaper and realized that video games had more to offer than violence and time waste. That video games have cultural potential, so they brought me on as a video games editor. I was the first and probably maybe still only full-time video games editor in the quality press in the world, which is quite incredible. I've now stepped down. I'm now video games correspondent for The Guardian, but I still write about them. And I can't ever conceive of not writing games, because it's a very, very serious profession. So here I am with Sonic at the E3 video game exhibition in Los Angeles, and here I am with Chocobo in Tokyo, at the Tokyo Game Show. Hard-hitting. So anyway, I was doing that for 20 years until 2005, when something quite big happened in my life. My son, Zach, was born. From the age of about, I guess, maybe 2.5, we started to realize that there was something a little bit different about Zach. He had a very limited vocabulary. He found social situations really confusing and scary. He hated noise and bustle. And he found things like clothes labels and seams really uncomfortable. One of the only places that he seemed kind of really happy and at peace actually was in water. He loved to take baths. Stressful days, we'd have him in that bath about 3 times a day. And he really loved it, and it just really calmed him down. So we were starting to piece together some of the clues that Zach may be autistic. And we went through, I'm sure some of you here are probably professionals in this community. Some of you will be autistic yourselves, but you'll know the quite long, difficult, grueling, disheartening, challenging process of getting a diagnosis, which we did. We got a diagnosis for our son in 2012. So it was really difficult for us to begin with, because I had no experience of autism, and I didn't really know what was going on, and neither did my wife. But one thing we really knew, apart from baths that Zach really loved, he really loved, from the age of about 2 or 3, he kind of grasped how to use an iPad, how to reprogram my Netflix set-top box so I couldn't use it. All those sorts of things. He was a whiz with technology. He was really great with user interfaces. He completely understood them immediately. Here he is with his younger brother, Albie, playing on the CBBC website. So yeah, he just seemed to grasp technology. Really, where his love of technology came from. Complete mystery to me. I passed down my Apple MacBooks as I got bored with them, and poor Albie's got the oldest one there. So yeah, it's partially my fault. At the age of about 3 or 4, I started playing video games with Zach because I understood that he really loved technology. And he felt really comfortable around technology, and it felt like it was a place that we could talk to each other and share. The first game I got him to play was a game called Little Big Planet on the PlayStation. And this is a kind of creative platforming game. And what you do in Little Big Planet is it gives you all the things you need to construct a very simple You can put them all together yourself and create your own little levels. And it has really beautiful, peaceful atmosphere and really lovely, like all the objects look like real life objects, look like toilet rolls and cotton reels, and it's full of like lovely. You end up making like a kind of Bagpuss style animation. But one of the really interesting things about Little Big Planet is that the lead character, Sackboy, is incredibly controllable, not just in terms of where you move him, but also his facial expressions. And I'm just going to show you a very, very quick clip of Stephen Fry explaining the emotional controls you have over this character. Why, or you'll probably better figure out why this is really important for me as the father of an autistic son, why this feature really helped us. So here we go. But as you can see, through Sackboy and through using a PlayStation controller, my limited vocabulary and found it very difficult to express himself, suddenly had a little creature on screen that he was able to explore and express his emotions. So I could take him over and we could put the game on and he could be or sad or cross, or if he just wanted to wave his arms around. So that was a really, really valuable game to me, and I actually spoke to, a couple of years ago, the developer of the game, Media Molecule, who are based in Guildford, a beautiful studio, and a really kind of progressive games. And they told me they'd received hundreds of letters from parents of autistic children themselves, thanking them for this feature in the game, because it allowed them to explore and express emotions that they'd found difficult before. Really moving. Another game that Zach really, really loved was a game called Burnout Paradise, which is a world driving game. So basically you get this great big city and you're given a car and you can just drive around it. And there were actually lots of complaints about it at the time from gamers who said, well, there's no structure to this game. I don't understand, where do the races start and stop? And the races actually come in, whenever you get to a traffic light, you can set a race off yourself and it begins. But lots of gamers thought this was a bit kind of do. But my son absolutely loved this game because what he was able to do was put his own structure, his own template over this world and play it how he wanted to play it. So there wasn't someone telling him to get to and to race against people and compete and possibly lose. All he had was a world to drive around and a beautiful car to explore it in. And so he made his own template. He made his own timetables of how he wanted to play this game. He had his own certain things that he of the map. So he constructed a world that made sense for him. Incredibly helpful for him. Because, I mean, this is typical for all children, but especially children, autistic children. There's this real kind of sense that you don't have that much control over your lives. You have a sense of helplessness. And I think one of the great things that video games taught him, and has taught me about video games as well, is they provide a space where you do have complete control and agency. And control and agency are vital elements of happiness for children, but often they're things that we don't give them. And again, this is especially true for autistic children. But the game really that discovered when he was 7 on my Xbox 360 that really kind of, I would say, changed our lives is Minecraft. And Minecraft is the best explained if you've not played it. It's kind of like digital Lego. So when you load up on your console or on your PC or on your iPad, it builds a whole world for you made out of blocks. And you can explore that world, you can go mining for materials, you can build buildings. Here's some examples of things people have made in Minecraft. So there's King's Landing from Game of Thrones. There's Hogwarts. There's the Springfield High School from The Simpsons. And that's actually a working calculator made using blocks and a form of electricity called redstone, which exists in the Minecraft world. So those are some of the amazing things that people have made with the game. But for Zach, really, it wasn't really about making astonishing things. It was just about expressing himself. Like, he's never had the patience or the capability, really, to draw or paint or even make things with Lego. He found it kind of confounding and difficult. But when I showed him Minecraft, he was immediately able to express himself. He just got it. And I think it came from his love and comfort with technology. But he was able to pull blocks together and build castles and mansions and houses. And I can distinctly remember the day where I first let him play the game for a little while by himself. Or something, this really weird kind of This very strange, higgledy-piggledy house that he'd built. But he came over, he got me and my wife, and he took us by the hand, and he sat us down in front of the television, and it was his house, and he'd made it. And he was kind of like a sort of an estate agent, and he was saying, well, here's the living room, here's the room full of wolves, weirdly. Won't go into that. And here's the garden. And it was just, me and my wife, I can distinctly still remember it. I'll never forget it. We looked at each other because he had never, ever been able to express himself creatively before. He'd never drawn a picture that he was proud of. He'd never made a that he appreciated and felt as though he could show anyone else. But he was proud of this. And it was incredible. And it kind of, it really changed the way I thought about video games in one kind of profound moment. Even though I've always loved them, I didn't realize that they could have this effect. About a year later, I was invited to be to appear on a documentary. Charlie Brooker, the creator of the Black Mirror series and the Newswipe series, he did a documentary called How Video Games Changed the World. And he asked me to come on and talk about Minecraft with a bunch of other people. And I just wanted to show you the Minecraft section from this. And particularly, I'm at the end. And when I went in to film this in a small photographic studio in Queen's Park, I was a tiny bit hungover. I've been out with some friends the night before, and sometimes when I'm hungover, and I don't know if anyone else can relate. Anyway, so they asked me to talk about Minecraft, and I think as I was talking, I was realizing the effect this game had had on our lives, and I think it's obvious. So I'll show you it. So yeah, when I was writing Boy Made of Blocks, which was you may have guessed by now, my novel is a connecting through Minecraft. It's a semi-autobiographical story. And when I was thinking, I communicate the appeal and the value and the worth of video games to people that don't play them, because a lot of people that read novels aren't gamers. So, and I really struggled to think, how am I going to convey what Minecraft means to me to people that don't play games? And I started to think about lots of the other fantasy we all know from reading books as children, places like Narnia and the 100-Acre Wood and Oz. And I tried to think about what made those places special. And I think what it was is to all of the children and the cute creatures, or the Tin Men and Dorothy, what those worlds mean is a space where they can express themselves and where anything can happen, where magic can happen. And I think as readers, as children, we all lots of us really understand that, but my son had to experience that kind of magic, magic and possibility through a video game rather than these worlds. So I always knew that I'm onto a kind of difficult challenge, really. Kind of regimented views of video games. They see them as a kind of a threat, as something that can be addictive, as things that are always violent. But my idea of them is very different. I see video games very much like these worlds. And we know that these are worlds that children can escape. We don't often think about video games in that way. But I totally do now, having seen my son explore and find himself in Minecraft and learn about magic and the possibilities of expression. To my son, games aren't a waste of time. They're of discovery. I found, as a journalist, I decided that it can't just be my son that is experiencing this with video games. My son can't be the only autistic child that's got this value out of Minecraft. So I started researching, talking to scientists, educators, reading a lot, and I discovered that autism and Minecraft connected since the game first arrived in 2011. There's specific dedicated servers for people, for autistic people to play together online, so that they can share and create and co-create in a kind of safe environment. But here's elements of this game that are really valuable to people, to autistic people. There's the fact that there's no prescribed missions or objectives. There's no voice or telling you you've got to do this, now you've got to do this, now you've got to do this. You're not being bullied by the game or the game system. It's a recognizable world, but it's super simplified. So there's no kind of hard edges. There's nothing worrying or confusing or unpredictable about Minecraft world. It all kind of makes sense. The world is full of really and mechanics that always work the same way. My son knows that if he digs up 2 pieces of wood, if he gets 2 pieces of wood and a bit of stone, then he'll make an axe, and that will always make that. So my son feels really secure in that world. Minecraft also has this really beautiful atmosphere about it. It's very quiet, it's very stable. It has this lovely piano soundtrack by a German composer called Daniel who just used the piano. Very kind of, I'm thinking of the composer that he's most similar to, but I guess, I can't remember his name, the guy who wrote, Sati, very similar to Sati, kind of ambient. And again, Minecraft is social, but it doesn't depend on you understanding social cues. You can play with lots of other people online or on one television, but you don't have to understand things like body language to get on with other people, working together on a common cause. So it takes out lots of the confusing static of human interactions. So yeah, one thing I've really loved and understood about games through playing Minecraft with my son is that games are what I call permissive spaces. So when you're in a video game, it allows you to do stuff without any negative side effects. You can crash your car in Burnout Paradise. You can make a really rubbish level in Little Big Planet. You can set loads of TNT in Minecraft and no one gets hurt. It's a place you can explore and be safe. But also, Minecraft provides liberating distraction. And what I mean by that is it's a space where, because you're concentrating on the game itself, it frees you up to talk about other things. And there's actually a part in my book, Boy where, there it is again. There's a section in Boy Made of Blocks where Sam, and it's based on real life. It's based on something that happened to me and my son. But Alex and Sam, they play Minecraft together, and Alex has got the feeling that at school, because he's coming in very quiet, very upset. But when he's asked about what's happening at school, he can't answer. He shuts down. So he sits Sam down, and they play Minecraft together, and they actually build a classroom in Minecraft. And as they're building the classroom, because Sam is distracted, he's able to talk about his life in the class. And through this, Sam is being bullied in his class by the boy that's sitting next to him. Now, this was actually drawn directly from my own life. And I did exactly the same thing with my son, Zach. He was having trouble at school. We couldn't understand what it was. He couldn't tell us. He couldn't communicate it. But when we sat down together and played Minecraft and built a classroom, he was able to let me know what was happening to him, and we were able to talk to the school. So that's what I mean. Games are liberating and distracting in that way. Another example of this, a couple of years ago, Pokemon Go. I don't know if anyone played this. A few. So Pokemon Go is a mobile phone game which uses the GPS tracking system in your phone, and essentially you can go around your town, your phone, and find Pokemon in the environment, and you can use your camera and augmented reality graphics to track down Pokemon and catch. It's filled with all the kind of map data that's on your phone anyway, so you can actually navigate around your town. It'll tell you interesting things around your town as you're exploring. Me and my sons were completely in love with this game. We spent the whole of the summer it came out just wandering the streets, finding Pokemon, finding out stuff about our town, because it gives you lots of information about landmarks, but also finding other people playing Pokemon. And they were easy to spot because it'd usually be 2 parents surrounded by children, looking at their phones, looking up, looking around. And you'd make these ad hoc friendships with people. You'd onto, and then, yes, we are. Which Pokemon have you got? But it wasn't me asking the questions. It was my son, who would never usually speak to other people he didn't know. But because Pokemon Go is kind of liberating and distracting, it gave him something to talk about. It gave him a way to talk to other people. And the really important thing about Pokemon Go is, as you're playing the game, you're looking at your phone, but you're talking to other people. So my son, again, didn't have to make eye contact. He didn't have to worry about body language. They had this kind of parser. It was almost like the conch in Lord of the Flies. It was a thing that gave them the permission to speak. Something that's overlooked a lot with video games. They're not just, when you're playing video games with other people, you're not just playing that game. You're not just shooting things. You're communicating and talking to each other. So anyway, this got a lot of coverage last year, as you can see. CNN, BBC, talked about autistic children playing Pokemon Go, getting them outside. Often children that were agoraphobic were given the desire, the wherewithal to go outside and play because they were compelled by this game. I got really interested in this earlier this year, and I sent out a tweet, because this is how I do all my research these days. I sent out a tweet because I know lots of autistic gamers, I know lots of autistic game developers, and so I asked people about the games that they played and why, because I wanted to find out. Obviously, it's very difficult. You cannot put autistic people in a group. There's, massive differences on the spectrum. I'm interested in finding out what autistic gamers and what autistic developers thought about games and the games that they played. I actually got around about 500 replies in the end of people telling me, autistic people telling me about the games that they played. And it's really fascinating to me to find out what they were playing and why. And one really, with maybe 65% of the gamers that I spoke to were fantasy role-playing games. These are incredibly popular with lots of the people that answered my question. Games like Witcher 3, Elder Scrolls, Final Fantasy Souls. These are games where essentially you create a character and you go out into a world and have lots of quests and adventures and fight monsters. Your character gets more powerful, fills your inventory with spells and weapons and shields. And for some reason, this genre was really popular with gamers on the autistic spectrum. And I got talking to a few of them, and there were lots of really interesting reasons why. Games offer you freedom with constraints, so you have a whole world to explore, but very, very obvious parameters to that world. There's only a set number of things you can do, but you can still go anywhere you like and explore at will. So it's freedom with lots of manageable objectives. Role-playing games always give you a series of quests and side quests that you can tick off on the screen. So it's kind of very logical and ordered, and it gives you a sense of achievement. Inventory management. Lots of the autistic gamers I spoke to love the idea that they can go into their inventory screen and decide what they want to get rid of or what spells they want to combine. There's that sense, again, of agency and creativity. And social simulation. Lots of role-playing games have very strong narrative elements, and as you're going through the world, you meet non-player characters. They will tell you to do stuff, and you'll form relationships, and you'll often have to navigate those relationships. There's a great series called Dragon Age, which is effectively, it's a fantasy role-playing game with all the monsters, but the really great thing about it is it's just full of love affairs. And that's the fun bit, getting together with people, hooking up, and seeing if your relationship is a disaster or not. But lots of the people I spoke to found this is really good practice, really good rehearsal for those kind of ad hoc, difficult social interactions. Here's a couple of people that, with some of their experiences. This guy was saying his brother has Asperger's, and he loves playing dialogue-heavy RPGs, in part to experiment with combat systems, mainly for the NPCs non-player characters to generate a character. So he loves kind of just meeting non-player characters and going through these with them. Some other popular games that came up, and I think for really interesting reasons. Again, lots of the autistic gamers I spoke to loved a game called The Sims, which is basically almost like a virtual reality documentary. You can of artificially intelligent humans who go about their lives, cooking, eating, having relationships, going to work, and you kind of have a certain amount of control over them. Again, it's a game which allows you to simulate and practice actions in a really comfortable and secure environment. Journey is a game, a really beautiful quest adventure game where you are journeying across a deserted, devastated civilization towards a mountain, and you don't know why you're going there, and you slowly find out as you go. But it has this really weird multiplayer component that when you're in the game, it's online, so sometimes another player is involved, but you have no way to talk to them, but you're sharing this experience together. And you can help each other or hinder each other or just try to communicate through movement. But it's a really fascinating, engaging experience. communication and interaction stripped to the very, very basics. And again, it's it's good kind of practice. The last game, by the way, that came up, it was really, really popular with autistic gamers, was Portal, which is a puzzle-based science fiction game with beautiful logic puzzles, really wonderfully presented in a kind of interesting, weird, kind of tilted world full of computers. And again, it's a really, really fascinating game. I had some people who played these games. I won't have time to go through them all now, but might be worth looking at. I think my PDF of this is available somewhere to people at this event. But yeah, autistic people explaining why they've loved these games. I love this one. Journey is wonderful for me. The only communication method being chirping. Yeah, you can press one button to make a noise, but that's the only way you can communicate. But still being able to use that to work with someone else to finish it is nice. I can't do generally. I find voice chat overwhelming, but Journey is one of my favorite games. So I really love these experiences. It really told me a lot about what games are doing that we often don't think that games are doing. So there's one game at the moment, a reasonably popular game that came out earlier this year. I don't know if anyone recognizes this. Fortnite, yeah. So Fortnite came out, I think it was September last year originally. Then they produced the Battle Royale version. Essentially, 100 people are kind of parachuted onto an island. It's multiplayer, 100 people at a time, and they have to fight until there's only one person left. So it's kind of like the Japanese movie Battle Royale or the Hunger Games. And it's become massively, massively popular. It's been downloaded, I think, like over 150 million times. It's the most watched video game on the video game channel Twitch. Some of the most watched YouTubers are Fortnite players. You might have seen some tabloid news stories about Fortnite and its addictive qualities. Has lots of worry and concern. Whenever a video game gets above a certain level of popularity, the Daily Mail pops out. It was almost automatic to tell us why this is going to be the end of civilization as we know it. What I love about Fortnite, though, and I do play it, I play it with my sons, both my sons. Zach absolutely loves Fortnite. It has a lot of the same cognitive, immersive, and social benefits as Minecraft and other role-playing games. So in Fortnite, you can build things in the game. So you can build defenses and forts. You can play with other people. You can get into a squad of it has that element of socializing without the need for body language, eye contact, those sorts of things. So it's social, it's creative, and it's fun. Like, it's really, really fun. It has this and unlock emotes and little dances that you can do together in the game. Like, often my son will just get together with his friends and they'll just have a bit of a dance and a bit of a mess around. I just love that. It has this kind of playful sense. The visuals are very kind of slapstick cartoony. So, and again, some of the autistic gamers that I know have really responded to the game in really positive ways. And I think what Fortnite kind of showed me, more than any other game really, just for its sheer popularity, is that video games kind of challenge social orthodoxies. And what I mean by that is the cool kids at school, the alpha kids at school, might not be the best at video games. And the kids that don't appear as cool or who struggle in the classroom can often be the best at games. Lots of my son's social contact comes through games. It's very difficult to make friends, but when a friend comes over to his house to play and they play Minecraft together, my son is just as good as everyone else. And it's the only part of his leisure life where that's true. My son can't play football, can't play team sports. He finds games difficult because the rules are so seamless and formless. But when he plays Minecraft with people, he's as in control as they are. And when he plays Fortnite with people, he's as good as everyone else. He's won it way more times than I have. But so he's been able to unlock things in Fortnite that some of his friends at school or some people haven't been able to get. So it's like instant social kudos for him, like in a way he could never have dreamt of without this game. So there are downsides, obviously, to Fortnite because it's really compelling. And I've had a few, like three thinking, oh my God, what have I done? I'm 47. So it's really compelling, but it's not just worthless time, and I'll never accept that about good video games and good design. So that's kind of mainstream games and what's happening with those. Have I still got time? Yes, I have. I thought I'd talk about more interesting things that are happening on the periphery of the games industry. And one really important thing that's happening now is that, you know, if you stand outside the video game industry, you often think that all video games are like Call of Duty or all video games like Grand Theft Auto. Really like the blockbuster video games. So just like if you compare it with cinema, so in your kind of Odeon screen, you'll probably have like Marvel films, big action blockbusters. Same as video games. That's the Call of Duty, you know, the Grand Theft Auto. But in movie scene, there's also an art scene, and you'll have arty cinemas. You know, London's full of them that show up very, very different sorts of films. And video games are just the same. Video games have an art scene. We have small communities of very dedicated small studios that are producing very offbeat, idiosyncratic games that you just don't see in your game store or at Argos. You have to go online and download them from sites like Steam or on the PlayStation Network Live. So video games have an arts community that are doing very different things with games. This is a game developer called Nina Freeman, who makes really, really personal, interesting games about her own life growing up, about her experience. She's a fascinating game maker. She uses lots of different, very simple visuals to get across messages of what it's like to be a woman growing up in the 21st century. You can actually see a couple of her games at the Museum, which has just started a new exhibition on video games, which is very, very heavily focused on independent, creative video game design. And Nina's games are there, and she's actually, there's a section of it where developers are projected onto a screen talking about the games that they make, and she's part of that. She's wonderful. So yeah, what's happening with independent game development all over the world, in that suddenly people who wouldn't have been able to make games maybe 5-10 years ago, suddenly, because you can buy games online, it's much cheaper to produce them. There's also an amazing free tools to make games as well. So games have become almost like punk rock in the 70s. You know, in the 70s, you could grab a guitar and a drum kit and a bass, and you start making punk music in a few minutes. You know, learn 3 chords, now you've got an album. Well, that's what video games are at the moment. You know, you can download the Unreal Engine, you can download Unity, which are games development engines. You can get together with a couple of mates, and you can make a game, upload it to Steam, and 1 million it the next day. It doesn't usually happen like that, but it can. So games have become a form of self they never have before, because the market, because the way of distributing games has radically changed. So now we're getting games like, all of these games are worth playing, by the way. Hellblade is a game about a picked warrior to go into the Norse underworld to save her boyfriend, but she suffers from psychosis, and the game was developed by a company in Cambridge with the help of psychologists who helped them to and how they could be presented in a game. And the lead character in Hellblade, she hears voices as she's going through the adventure. And if you play the game wearing headsets, you can hear the voices from different places around her. It's an incredibly shocking, moving, emotional, terrifying, but fascinating insight into mental health. And it's a beautiful game as well. Life is Strange is a wonderful school-based about these 2 girls. It's about their lives growing up, their friendship together, but in the background there's a big kind of mystery around their town. But really it's about their relationship and their struggles as teenagers in a small town in America. Night in the Woods is about depression and anxiety. The lead character, it's all anthropomorphized, whatever that is. Animals who look human. And the whole town is filled with these and basically the lead character, she comes home, she's dropped out of college, she comes home to her deadbeat town that's falling apart, and she has to kind of navigate her way back into her life and her deadbeat parents and her depressing friends. And it's really fascinating. Depression, failure, worry, anxiety, but also really funny as well. And finally, Actual Sunlight is a game about depression and agoraphobia. And again, it sounds really dull and sad, but made. So this is what's happening with games now. You know, none of these games are, none of these games are about shooting people. games are massively and radically expanding. A new generation of independent games is subverting and radically softening established genres. And what I mean by that is kind of idiosyncratic young developers now who are going, well, I've seen fantasy RPGs and I know they're all about fighting with swords and stuff, but I don't want to do that. So you have games like Stardew Valley, which is a beautiful 2D game about farming and making friends, and it's lovely. Undertale is a dungeon exploring game where instead of killing the monsters, you friends with them, and you can get through the whole game without killing anything, and it's really lovely. I love this. This is a game called Celeste that came out last year. All of these games are on PlayStation, Xbox, PC, which uses the platform game genre to explore anxiety and panic attacks. So lots of the things that happen in the games are kind of allegorical to panic and anxiety. Yes. So here's the character talking about how she deals with anxiety. I can't stop thinking about dumb crap. My brain fixates on these stupid things that happened forever ago. Characters, whatever they express about the world, they're really expressing about their mental state. It's really clever. We're also seeing a lot more, I've still got some time, yes. We're also seeing a lot more attempts by the industry and about academia to use games and express in a way that's friendly to autistic people and to employ autistic people in the games industry. And so Microsoft now has a special kind of recruitment practice for autistic applicants where they don't have formal interviews. If you want to go and work at Microsoft, you can go on a 3-day visit. And you just go in and they show you around the studio and you work on little projects with very, very well-trained staff. And so the interview is much more kind of seamless and formal and less assertive and aggressive. Because they know there's a massive talent pool that they're just not exploring. There's this amazing company in Dallas, Texas called the Nonpareil Institute, which teaches games and software development to young adults with autism spectrum disorders. They produce and distribute and sell games. So it's basically kind of a university for autistic developers, but what they make there, they sell, and they've made some amazing games. So I think what I'm as part of this talk is that the games industry is waking up to the need for greater diversity of thought, design, and action. So I had a very personal, I guess, a personal epiphany with video games that I immediately understood through my son that there was video games that was important to people who are non-neurotypical or didn't think and act. And it's been amazing to see the industry kind of waking up to this as well. So just simple things like pride flags being in, oh, I've spelt Marvel wrong, what a nightmare. So photograph yourself next to pride flags in the new Marvel Spider-Man game, which is really good. Apple App Store has had an annual Autism Month for showing off apps and games with autism as a key theme. Girls Make Games is an amazing set of coding clubs which work throughout Europe and the US, teaching young girls how to code. Cool environment with industry professionals, trying to up the amount of women in the games industry, which is tragically ridiculously low. And a couple of months ago, we just saw Microsoft brought out adaptive controller, which is a games controller for the Xbox specifically designed for people with physical disabilities, but also I found actually is useful to lots of people who are non-neurotypical. So people on the so autistic have been able to use this as well, but it's a very specific adaptive controller you can plug other things into, other buttons, big buttons, small buttons, knee controllers, mouth controllers, so that anyone can play Xbox games. So in the end, I guess what I'm saying is that I learned something about video games, and what I learned was they're not just a way to waste 5 minutes, or they're not just about teenage boys in their bedrooms trying to kill each other in Doom. That people can express themselves and where people feel welcome and where they can meet other people that think in the same way. I think really ultimately, for me, throughout my life and for my son, definitely video games are about freedom. Before I leave you, often when I do these talks, people say, oh, which game should I play with my son or my daughter at the moment? So I just wanted to leave you with 6 games that are really, really fun to share between parents and children, whether your children are or not. So Forza Horizon, lovely open world driving game. Sea of Thieves, really funny shared pirate adventure for the Xbox and PC. Fortnite, be careful with it. Make sure you have set amount of times to play, but which is possible. I can tell you through experience. Rocket League, a multiplayer sports game. Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, one of the greatest role-playing adventure games ever made. It's absolutely wonderful. And Lego Marvel Superheroes 2, which is a really funny platformy adventure. All of these are really worth playing with your children, whether they're neurotypical or whatever. They're really good fun. That was it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if I have time for questions. I don't know if anyone's got any. Has anyone got any questions? Oh yes, I'll just take the questions and see what happens. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
I think it's really great that you're destigmatizing the people who love to play video games and really opening up the discussion to focus on the positives. However, it's still quite common for many women to be ostracized in the gaming world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering what your idea on how to open up tolerance for non-male persons in the gaming world. So, hoping that discussion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the great news is that that's kind of almost happening organically in a lot of what we're seeing is lots more game developers are women now. So it used to be something like 7% of development staff in the UK were women. Now it's much more up to sort of like 25, 30%. In the independent sector, it's almost, you've almost got parity. So we're seeing more and more women being visible as game developers. And I think that's helping young women understand that there's a space for them in game development. We're also seeing much more video games which are diverse in their appeal. So not as much kind of military-style shooters, but a much broader array of games. So that may be more typically attractive to young girls. But we're also seeing lots of really interesting events and communities in games, which are specifically for women, girls, gender minorities, together and talk about games. There's things like a Ladycade, which is a group of female developers who get together with women and gender minorities to play games together in a really safe environment. And again, the influence kind of bowls outwards, I think. So I would say I love the idea of kind of friendly spaces online, communities, and we're seeing that. We're seeing women game developers creating communities around them and also being. So Siobhan Reddy, the CEO of Media Molecule, that creates A Little Big Planet, is giving a BAFTA talk next month. And just being that visible is really, really helpful. And CEO of Ninja Theory, the creators of Hellblade, is a woman. So there's lots more women who are visible and have powerful jobs and are really respected developers. And the more that happens, the more organically young women will find. So I think that's really important. And it's kind of a generational thing. I think as women grow up playing games, they're able then to pass that on to their kids. And I think we're seeing change in an organic way, but also we are seeing communities. We are seeing much more seeing much better application of STEM subjects to young girls in certain schools. I've definitely seen that happening. So I think it's every level of the industry, from primary school upwards, there's something that can be done. Girls Make Games is another great example. Really passionate, engaged women developers going into schools and teaching young girls that computers aren't for. So yes, hopefully that kind of answers your question. Should we do one more question and then, is there any more questions? Oh, yes.
I was just wondering, sort of looking at the relationship with your son and the Fortnite, it's something we've client that we look after who is always trying to Grand Theft Auto.
Right.
And every time he plays it, his behaviours that challenge increase, so we've always said no. And someone suggested that we use Fortnite as an alternative. But how is it that you gauge with your son what level is appropriate for him?
Fortnite, and with all games, I'm really careful, so he knows he has a set time to do it. So we set a timetable, and we say you've now got an hour and a half to play this game. We've got an egg timer thing that we put next to the screen, so he knows he has, and I will warn him at 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes that it's going to be time to wind down, so that he always still feels in control. And I make sure that if he's in the middle of, when it gets to the end of the time that he's got to stop, but he's still in the middle of a game with friends, I won't tell him he's immediately got to come out. I let him finish that game, because sometimes a lot of tantrums can happen when control is taken away from children. And if they're taken out of a game in the middle of a game where their friends are relying on them, that can be really quite destructive. So I make sure that I allow him to finish the game. So I really try to closely manage his time with the game. So I know exactly who he's playing with. So if he's playing with friends, I know who those friends are, making sure I manage that. And I'll sit with him as well when we're playing as well, because I feel if he's not by himself, I think the emotional engagement with the game, if you feel spectated, I think it's very different than playing alone, where you can become intensely involved in the game. Just the presence of someone else can really radically change that. So those are things that I do. I don't know if that's helpful. But instead of Grand Theft Auto, could I also suggest there's a game called, it's for kids, but it's really funny, and it's called Cover. And it's basically a Lego version of Grand Theft Auto. It's very peaceful, very funny, very cartoony, but it's hilarious. It's just not, sex workers and machine guns. Who wants those in a Lego game? So yeah. So I mean, that's an experience you can have and feel more controlled. Okay. I think we better leave it there, unfortunately, because we run out. I actually bought copies of Boy Made of Blocks with me, and I'll be downstairs on the table at the near the reception. I'll sit there, and if anyone wants to buy one, I'll be there. You're more than welcome. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.